Hello everyone, in this lesson we'll just give a basic tutorial on how to use Google Sheets. We'll start by going over all the icons. The first icon is the undo button, which will allow you to undo anything you've done. So for example, if you type in the word burrito, you can undo that change by clicking the undo button. Now if you want to have that change back, you can click on the redo button, the next icon over. The next icon is a print icon, which will allow you to change a variety of print settings to print the data as you want. Instead of clicking on, instead of selecting current sheet, you can select selected cells, and that will allow you to print on the selected cells rather than the entire sheet. Let me show you an example of how to do that. One shortcut to select multiple cells is click on one cell, hold the shift button on your keyboard, and select another cell. That will allow you to select all the cells between the cells you've selected. If you want to select cells individually, you can hold the control button and select the cells individually. Now notice that currently I'm printing out the current sheet, but when I change the selection to selected cells, notice that I am now getting rid of some of the data I haven't selected. Going on, you can adjust the paper size. So the default is 8.5 by 11. You can change the dimensions as you please. The next section is landscape and portrait. Landscape is printing the dimensions long ways rather than the opposite, which we may have the dimensions be taller and skinnier rather than wider. The next section is how would you scale the sheet. You can scale the data to a variety of options. You can have it normal, fit to width, fit to height, or fit to page. Or you can have it fit by a custom number. You can also control the margins. If you're unaware what the margins are, it refers to the space between the data and the edges of the page. So notice how on the sheet, there's nothing above line 1. But when you go to print out these data, there's an empty space between that data and the edges of the paper. That's because we have margins between the data and the edges of the page. And you can just change the margins as you please. So notice when I adjusted the margin to wide, it created more space between the data and the edges of the page. If you don't want to print out the grid lines, all you have to do is unselect the grid lines. By default, the show grid lines is selected. The show notes portion refers to an option you have in Google Sheets. In Google Sheets, you can add notes and comments to cells. What this does is that anytime you hover over the cell, a window will appear of a note or comment you've entered relevant to that cell. Let me show an example. On cell A1, I will go to Insert, Note, and write type of food. Notice that there's a black triangle on the top right corner of that cell. Now, when I hover over the mouse over that cell, a note will appear of what I've entered. When I select another area, that note will go away. Now if I want to get rid of the note, what I do is I hover over the cell, bring my cursor into the window where the note appears, select the text, and delete the text until that window is completely empty. Now I'll click away. Notice that the note has disappeared from that cell. Now let me put back a note so you can see how the printer settings can change as you desire. So notice that notes appear on a separate page rather than the data. Notes don't appear floating around next to the data. And notice that when the cells have notes, it has a bracket and a number where that note was. So the first note has a number 1, indicating it was the first note in that sheet. The actual note itself appears on a separate page and will have the contents of that note in a separate page. If you have multiple notes, it will repeat this format. On the data, there'll be a bracket with a number indicating the number of that note, and there'll be a following number from behind the previous note. If you unselect notes, it will disappear and you will not print it out. Here you can select whether if you want the pages down then over or over then down. The next selection is the alignment of the data. You can align the data horizontally, to the left, or to the right, or to the center. Or you can align the data vertically, or have it aligned to the top, bottom, or center. Here you can select the headers and the footers, and what do you want to print out in that portion. If you would like to print out the actual sheet, go to Next, and we will connect to your printer, and you can select the number of pages, the copies, and whether you want to print in black and white or in color, and then you would select print to print it out. The next icon is the paint format icon. It will allow you to format the paint in that cell. You might create a variety of formats from one cell to another, and you can copy that format rather than copying the data and pasting it to another cell. So let me show you that I can have the cell be blue, copy how that's formatted, and put it on another cell. The next icon is the zoom icon. You can control how zoomed in to the sheet it is. The next icon is the dollar symbol icon. You can change the type of format a cell is. For example, you can change the number 1 to a currency, and now it's changed from the number 1 to $1. You can also change the format of a cell to a percentage. So now it's 100% rather than $1. You can also move the decimal with the following icons. So this is the decrease decimal button. And then the next icon is the increase decimal button. The next icon will allow you to format cells in a much more variety of formats. You can put it to plain text, number, percentage, scientific, accounting, financial, currency, currency rounded, date time, duration, and even more. The next section is the font of cells. So the default in Google Sheets is Arial. You can change the font by clicking on the font and selecting another font. Notice that the cell has changed font, but the other cells remain the same font. In the next section, you can change the size of the text. Notice that I've increased the text size for this cell, but for the entire row, it has increased in size to compensate for the size of the text. The next icon is the bold icon. You can bold and unbold text with this button. What that does is just makes the text more broader and more pronounced. It makes more difference when you have a thinner font. So let me select this cell and show you how it looks like in bold. Notice that the text has become more broader and more pronounced. The next icon is the italicized icon. What it does is give it a slant to text. So let me select that. And notice how the text has a slight slant to the right now. The next icon is a strike through icon. What it does is just mark a horizontal line through whatever text is on that cell. The next icon is the text color icon. You can customize the text color as you please. Let me change this text to red and become red. The next icon is the fill color. It will change the background color of a cell. So let's change this to orange. One shortcut I wanted to teach you is that if you want to have multiple cells have the same color, but you don't remember the exact color you use, just select both cells and the color you use on the first cell you selected will still be selected on the paint bucket tool. Okay. The next icon is the border icon. It will allow you to change the borders of a cell. Let me show you an example of that. Notice that the borders of cell C3 now has a border around it rather than the grayed out default border cells normally have. You can make the borders more pronounced as you want. The next portion is the merge cell icon. What that does is that it combines the contents and the cells together. So notice that A5 and B5 are two separate cells. When I merge them, now they're together. Now, when you do this, how Google Sheets treats B5 is that it sort of doesn't exist. So if you have formulas that depend on B5 existing, you will probably get an error, depending on your implementation. The next icon is the alignment icon. You can change the alignment of the text within a cell. You can have it aligned to the left, to the right, or to the center. Let me show you an example of those options. The next icon is the vertical align icon. If you have a row that is very tall, you can notice that there's a huge space. You might want to have the data be centered in both dimensions, horizontally and vertically. Or you might want it to be in the center, but also be aligned to the bottom or aligned to the top. The next icon is the text wrapping. What this will allow you to do is have the text be displayed in certain ways. For example, if you want the dimensions of a cell to be pretty small, but you want long text, you can have the text spill out of the cell, or you can have it show that the text be cut off. I'll show you an example of that. So I will just type in a very long random series of characters, and notice that the cells are not being displayed. It's being cut off by the next cell. If you go to the text wrapping and have it spill out and overflow, it will show on the show rather than be cut off. You can also have the text be wrapped in the cell. So instead of being flowing to the next cell, it will wrap around the space available to it and continue on to another row within that cell. The next icon is a text rotation icon. You can have the text be aligned in a slant rather than have the text be horizontal. I'll show you an example of that right now. The next icon is a hyperlink icon. What this will allow you to do is insert links to different websites onto the text. That will allow users to click on it and visit a website you want. For example, I can type in the letter G, and then insert and click on the hyperlink button and type in google.com, and enter. Now this text will have a link to the website I've assigned it to, and users can click on it and it'll be brought to another tab. The next icon is the insert comment button. As I previously mentioned, you can insert comments or notes. They are pretty similar in functionality. The only difference is that notes don't involve your accounts, while inserting comments does. People can see who's saying the comment versus a note where whoever inserted the note is not known, it's just not displayed. So if I go to insert comments, I can type in whatever note I want, but random note. So whenever anyone hovers over that cell, people can see the note that I made on my account and see when I've entered the comment and see my name. There's also a resolve icon that will get rid of that comment. The next icon is an insert chart icon. It will allow you to insert a variety of charts, such as pie charts or bar charts, based on the data you select. You don't have to have sheets be on the same. Sorry, you don't have to have charts be on the same page as a sheet. You can have its own dedicated sheet. And notice when I do that, I've created another tab. So on the bottom of the Google Sheet, you can have multiple tabs on a workbook. So to go back to the tab I was previously working on, I'll just click on sheet 1. The next icon is a filter view icon. What this allows you to do is filter in the data and display certain data that you desire. So let me start a new tab and show you that functionality as well. So in column A, I've created a list of stores. But let's say I only want to see some stores. What I would do is create a filter. So I'm going to select that row and click on filter. Now, when I click on the filter icon that appears next to store, I can filter as I desire. So let's say I only want to see how many times I entered the word Target. I can just have Target only selected and unselect the other stores and click OK. Now I see that I've entered Target twice on that column. And you can filter in a variety of ways and filter for a variety of data. So let me show you some of the other options. You can filter if cells are empty, if cells are not empty, if the cells contain a certain text, does not contain a certain text, or the text starts with certain characters, ends with certain characters, or the text is exactly as you specified. You can also filter by dates. You can also filter numbers if they're greater than or equal to or less than or in between something. And so those are the filtering options. You can also have a very customized format. A very customized formula that you can set up. For example, you can have it, the number has to be between something, but also be like an odd number. But you can create a variety of formulas to do that. So if you want to unfilter it, just click the filter button again. The last icon is a function icon. What that will allow you to do is create a variety of formulas that will allow you to do many different calculations. For example, I'll create a column with some numbers. Let's say I want to add all these numbers. What I can do is go to the formula icon, click on sum, and then refer to the cells I want to add up. So I'm going to enter in B1 colon B3. That formula has added up all the numbers I've designated to add. Notice if I type in a number underneath 3, it does not get added because I've not designated that number to be added from the range of cells I've selected. I've only told the formula to add in B1 to B3. The last thing I will share in this lesson is that you can revert the sheet into how the sheet was previously, not with just the undo button, but by looking at the history of edits on the sheet. What you do is select this portion and then look at the time frame of the sheet that you want to revert the sheet to. Let's take let's take a moment for the sheet to load. Okay. So I've selected a much earlier version of how the sheet was. Now I will click restore this version and click restore. Notice that the tabs we've created throughout this lesson are now gone, and all the edits we've done are now gone. Now, if we want, we can also go back and undo what we've done, but this concludes our lesson since we've gone over through all the basic functionalities of Google Sheets. Thank you.